I want to thank everybody for coming today. My name is Jim Porter. I'm head of the health plan practice area at Merge, and we're excited to present to you this webinar today, Mastering Medicare AEP 2026 with Expert Strategies. And in that regard, I'm excited to have this expert panel with us who we're going to introduce in just a couple minutes. But before that, I just want to level set because I don't know if everybody knows who Merge is. Merge is a full service agency with offices throughout the country. And we like to say at Merge, we merge storytelling and technology to bring health, wealth, and happiness to the world. And we do that with our clients. We have 18 different health plan clients, and we work in Medicare Advantage, Medicaid, ACA, brand. We also do a lot of work in experience technology where we specialize in platforms like Adobe, like Salesforce, and Sitecore. Today's topics, we're going to talk about a lot of things, but some of the things we're going to talk about today are benefit reduction in this current environment, leveraging data to maximize results, member retention strategies, switching and what that means for our marketing approach, product design, and AI. So, a couple things of note before we start. Make sure, I know we were just using the chat section to tell people, tell us where you're calling in from. But if you have a question, which if we have time, we're going to field at the end, if you could put questions in the Q&A section, which is at the bottom of your screen, that would be great. And then lastly, we're going to have a special offer to the folks who have come to the webinar today. We're going to talk a little bit, we're excited about that, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that at the end of the session. So with that, we'll do introductions, and we'll start it out with Alan.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Jim. And first of all, in full disclosure, I just want to say that I'm dealing with some really severe pollen allergies today. So if I have to go on mute to stifle a sneeze or a cough, just apologies in advance. But this is the season, so we got to be ready for it, I guess.
Great.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alan McKirby. I'm Director of Marketing at Government Programs Marketing at Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, New Jersey. I've been here for about 14 years, the last 8 of which have been in my current role. Prior to coming to Horizon, I was a Director of Marketing at GlaxoSmithKline Consumer Healthcare.
Great. And we'll turn it over to Jim.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for inviting me, Jim, and the Merge team. My name is Jim Polite. I have, I guess, 25 years of experience in the Medicare industry. Started in the call center space a long time ago. I spent 18 years with Wunderman Thompson, now VML, leading their growth practice tied to health plans, specifically in Medicare. And I currently sit in the seat as Chief Growth Officer for HealthWorks AI, where we help Medicare plans optimize their benefit designs and network operations.
Great. Michelle Boudreau.
Hey everybody, I'm Michelle Boudreau. I'm an SVP Client Service Leader here at Merge. I have been at Merge for quite some time. I'll say it's 1 year less than Jim, but I'm not going to say how many years. My career has been exclusively healthcare, so starting with discovery, diagnostic, medical devices, but focused on health plans exclusively since 2016 and spanning the spectrum of products and brand marketing, and happy to be here.
Great. Jason.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Jason Budelman. I'm an analytics leader here at Merge. So my career spans primarily in health and health data, starting off with electronic healthcare records, but then have had the privilege of the last 10 years working here at Merge alongside the people you see before you.
Great. All right, let's dig in. So we all know there's a lot of financial pressures these days, and that sometimes can lead to benefit reductions. How can marketers maintain appeal for those plans without overpromising? And we'll start it off with Alan.
Thanks, Jim. And that's a great question. The financial pressures are real for all of us. I think, we just need to change our mindset about trying to have a laundry list of benefits that we want to promote with every single ad. And as benefits get dialed back, it's important to focus on those that have real meaning and value to the prospective member. Things like if you can maintain your $0 premium product, that's important to MA beneficiaries. Zero premiums, something that's been around almost since the inception, and it's meaningful. But there's other benefits as well that you can highlight and profile to focus on and to demonstrate the value that you're bringing to the marketplace. So instead of having a laundry list of every benefit that's out there just to differentiate yourself, focus on the things that are going to drive value. I think storytelling is important too, as we have compelling stories, maybe incorporating things like member testimonials to demonstrate how your members appreciate the value that you bring to them, and incorporating that in your messaging throughout your AEP marketing.
Great. Anybody want to add on to that? Jim, Polite?
Yeah, I can add a little bit. So I think, I think you're a great example here, Alan, that your brand has a lot of value in the marketplace, right? So there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of people that have been members for a long time. And so leveraging that relationship is important, even though the value is, in reality, it's down, right? I mean, plan values have gone down against traditional Medicare because of reimbursement rates. So that's a challenge. The other thing I would say, and it's one of the things that our company does, is bringing in that intelligence to understand what benefits really drive growth and which are most valued. And so when you understand that, then you can lean into what messaging you put around those benefits, and you can realign that value statement, right? As opposed to your point, Alan, having a long, laundry list of benefits, which ones really matter and are important to them, and then leaning into those.
Great. Second question. What are some of the macro trends going on in the Medicare Advantage world that plans should keep an eye on? And how should they factor these into their strategy, whether it has to do with competitive landscape or consumer expectations? Jim, Polite, sorry. What about that question?
Yeah, this is a fun one, right? Because it's Medicare Advantage has been a dynamic industry of late. It's been under severe pressure, tying to that first question. So, companies have had to adapt and do lots of things. Been on a couple calls in the past 2 days with clients, and kind of some of the themes there were, I've got buckets of activity I need to do. There's some places I need to grow, some places I candidly need to shrink, and some places I need to retain my customers. And so we're going to spend some more time talking about the retention piece further in this story. But I think that's different than for many years in the Medicare Advantage space, where it was just grow, 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 and we're going to figure out the rest later. Now it's not. It's if you looked at last year, you had Humana devoted, a lot of the large players pulling out of markets. And guess what? Their earnings calls of late say that worked. So there's some catch up from some plans to figure out what those strategies are. The other thing I would say, and we always keep an eye on the national players, is what are they doing from a product portfolio perspective? So United, for instance, went hardcore into C-SNPs, and they're moving nationwide. I think I don't know what it's a significant number of new plans they launched last year, and D-SNPs continue to grow. So those are things I think all of you are dealing with in one way, shape, form or another, and things that marketing needs to be aware of and thinking about how they bring those into their mindset.
Great. Michelle, do you want to add something to that?
Sure. Picking up on the themes of the economics, I think we've all been following the financial reporting coming out at the end of Q1. And I was intrigued by a little bit of a spectrum there. You had United saying things were unacceptable, and there's various reasons. Elevon said, hey, we're looking good, we're on track, but then a few days later pulled back on some marketing of Medicare. And then we had Clover coming out with a pretty rosy story and really seeming to tout they've cracked the nut on managing members and managing costs. And what is that going to mean for their ability to skew back to growth and being aggressive, whether it's product design or marketing? And as we're stabilizing for profitability and the right mix and the right products, what does that mean for future growth and new to Medicare if they're going hard while we're stabilizing or going after perhaps some key geos or priority regions that are helping our financial and our business strategy. So I think figuring out how to manage members and how to offset I'm expecting some significant competitive um, encroachment from those that are doing it well. The other, and this might play out a little bit less, but just the dynamics in the healthcare space, looking at the penetration of Medicare Advantage slowing and seeing some of the negativity that's in the press, prior authorizations. Hospitals are broadcasting their concerns about reimbursement and how that's impacting their survival in the community. So will we need to support brokers or sales reps to reposition Medicare Advantage for the great value proposition that it is of the quality of the care, the price, but doing no harm to the community. So I think there's a couple of interesting dynamics for the category as a whole coming up.
Great. The next question is for Jason, and it has to do with data. How do health plans leverage data to optimize AEP spend? And what should they be doing differently, whether it's in predictive analytics or real-time performance monitoring, or I'll just open it up to you to answer that.
Sure. And I think the last word that you said in that question, differently, is really the key thing that you need to keep in mind. I think that if we're breaking down optimizations into a couple different areas, there's the optimization that you do before you get into the campaign and really understanding that audience to make sure that you're kind of setting up the infrastructure to target different audiences with different creative and understanding those touch points. And then there's the optimizations that you're obviously doing within the campaign. So the way that we like to think about optimizations here at Merge is that like those are different levers that you can pull. So you're finding that efficiency as you go through it. And really it's that data variability that acts as the fulcrum that you can really like trigger those optimizations on. So a good use of that is that we're using a lot of data, obviously partnering with our clients for data that is available there, but then also, similar to Jim's company, the CMS data that's available, as well as other claims data that we're getting from partners such as IQVIA, to really understand who the audiences are that we're going after and any differentiation that we can do from a segmentation standpoint. That's a significant lever for us, especially from a learning standpoint. And then the second part of that is obviously those more immediate levers that we can pull from an optimization standpoint. And that's where really our best friends on the media side here at Merge, where we work closely with them. And I think that it is critical that it's a short window that you have that preparation in place ahead of time so you know how to react to the signals as we're seeing. So whether it's a competitor in the market or competitive bidding, that you need to have that playbook and that plan so you can be opportunistic as the signals appear in the data.
Great. And Alan, from the client's perspective, what's your take on how do you best leverage data to optimize your spend when, I'm not saying money's tight, but we have to make sure that we're maximizing our opportunity with what we have in front of us with budgets.
Well, money's always tight, as we all know, and we have to make sure we justify every penny of it. First of all, I agree with everything that Jason just said. Having the appropriate tagging in place prior to campaign launch, and then optimizing as you go, working collaboratively with your agency media partners is critical. You have to be able to measure to know how well you're doing. And just one thing I would add to that is, we got to keep in mind AEP is 10 to 12 weeks most, depending on when you start pre-AEP marketing. And there isn't much time to adjust as you go. So you've got to meet frequently to look at the data, make decisions, and take action. And if you're only looking at it, once or twice every couple of weeks, you're likely going to miss opportunities to optimize effectively and really maximize the spend you have. I think the only other thing I'd add, different than what Jason said, is the opportunity to use data to create your consumer segments. I think, and then you can leverage predictive analytics and modeling to create segments that you want to measure and monitor as you go through, but high value segments based on the data you have. If you have collected data over the past few years of folks who've left your plan, it's very likely, depending on your data partner, that you've got enough data to create likely switchers, a likely switcher model, and then identify that segment within your own member population that you want to maintain and retain and have a focused strategy for that. Similarly, if you can use the data you have to create likely buyer models, that can help you, develop audiences that you can effectively reach and measure and monitor as you go. So I think the only last thing I'd mention is to the extent you have some consumer segmentation based on the data you have, you can create personas and profiles that help you personalize the creative, both particularly email and direct mail, which can use that data to really bring that experience and make a connection to that prospective member through the creative that you develop.
Great. Um, this next one's for you, Michelle. I know what we've seen with our clients is member retention seems to have a bigger priority among our health plans. So a larger piece of the pie that budget is during AEP is going to member retention and budgets throughout the year. So how do we make sure that we're maximizing our retention spend throughout the year, whether it's improving member experience or in early engagement on renewals? But what's your take?
Yeah, I think with an AEP focus, and I'm going to pick up on a lot of the themes that Alan was just talking about, we know consumers value tailored experiences, and they have an expectation since you've been with them that you're going to know about them and be able to guide them more effectively. So we really need to tap into that data that you have so that we can bring that personalized experience. We have to balance personalization, but not going so far that it crosses into intrusion or maybe a little bit creepy. So we also think about executability. We're all racing during the summer to get the AEP materials done and out. So we have to have a personalization strategy that is pretty easy to implement. So we look at what are the triggers that are going to be from a data point of view to the consumer that says, hey, they get me, they know my needs. I've made the right choice. I trust them. I'm going to stay with them. So we look at things like, can we include some provider information that they're currently using? Can we look and understand what benefits they most value? If we're migrating them to a more appropriate product, what's the different? What is the plus side that they're going to get with the new product? But we do that with dynamic fields and population, but we do it with a limited data set so that it can be built and in a way that's error-free and implementable. So really trying to tap into data and personalization to build the value and tell the story.
And I think, Michelle, you just created a new word,
Uh-oh.
executability. That's a new one. So, Alan, what's your take on member retention? How do we make sure that we're doing it right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Michelle that personalization and using data to do that and to demonstrate to your members you know them is absolutely important. And retention overall is important. I think it's becoming more critical now as consumers have more options to choose from in many markets. And if you're a small local plan like we are, you get lost in a sea of national advertising that it's you can't compete with that. You sort of have to find other ways to break through. And so you don't want your members to be distracted by that messaging and perhaps go after the shiny object. I think that the key thing is you got to start the retention efforts early in the member's experience and their journey at the outset. I mean, it starts with that initial welcome call that, well, first of all, the onboarding experience with enrolling in the plan should be seamless, but also once they're onboarded, and they get the welcome call, work with member services to have really compelling scripting so that that member feels like they truly are welcome and they know that they're going to have an experience and can trust the health plan that is being represented by that person on the other side of the call. Develop really compelling onboarding materials. Have a welcome kit that includes contact information for all the key benefit areas, as well as a very simple explanation of the benefits and how they can get the most out of their benefits. I think during the plan year, there's opportunities to make appropriate contacts with members to help them get the most out of their health plan, particularly in the early days. So host virtual and in-person meetings if you're able to welcome new members to go through their plan benefits that they actually have. So do it by county, by region, and make sure you're focusing on the benefits that they actually enrolled in, and invite some of your pharmacy and member services teams there and care management teams so that they can yeah, you can put a face to the health plan and important benefit areas. I think it's important that you give them that experience early, and then throughout the year, offer opportunities for wellness seminars, for ANOC meetings before the next plan year to let the member know what's changing in your plan year, but it's coming from you, not just in the mail in a very a very sanitary way that the ANOCs are typically mailed out. And I think it's also important that you keep your social sites active with content that's compelling. Encourage your members to follow you on your social sites, and then populate that with important, relevant information that they find useful. And I think it helps create that connection. Importantly, the social sites are becoming more of a member services channel now. So you have to be prepared for that. You have to have social listening, monitoring, and then address any complaints immediately, and give that good experience. And sometimes you'll find that a person who complains on social but gets a good experience and a rapid follow-up will post very positive comments demonstrating how the health plan was responsive and reactive. So those are some of the other things I would add.
Great. And kind of related to this, we all saw an increase in member churn and switching, and most people on this call had seen the DEFT research, most recent DEFT research. So how should Medicare Advantage plans adapt their marketing strategy, knowing that this trend is probably going to continue? And I'll go back to you, Alan.
Yeah, and just dovetail on some of the things I just mentioned. I think that churn is as a function of distance that some health plans have with their members. If the member feels like they're not being listened to, or if the health plan doesn't answer the phones promptly, doesn't answer their questions or resolve their questions in the first call, they're going to have a reason to look elsewhere. And so I think your marketing, if you don't invest some of your marketing dollars in effective member retention strategies I mentioned previously, I think you're going to find that churn will be maximized. Now, of course, if financial pressures lead to significant benefit reductions, well, I think the best way to approach that is to be as transparent as you can. Sometimes that's just the nature of it. And I think members appreciate when you can bring them honest information and share, well, why are my co-pays going up? Why is my cost share increasing? Well, there's reasons for that, and still steer the conversation to those benefits that aren't changing, that still are high value. So I think you just have to be focused on it year round. You just can't do it during AEP.
And I think being honest and forthright helps build trust, even if the message is not exactly what people want to hear. Michelle, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, with all the disruption that happened last year with especially the big nationals shedding members, there's probably a good number of members that signed up for a plan and then had some surprises. They didn't understand their benefits for the plan that they joined, and an unexpected bill, or they expected something to work one way and it turned out another. So this season, I think we're going to have more shoppers. I think we could have shoppers that have a higher level of skepticism and distrust. So I think the clarity and the education that we provide, so that there's a good conversation and understanding of what are the needs, what are the benefits the plan is delivering, and how do they access them. So the group that can earn that trust and be that truly trusted advisor is going to win in terms of enrollment, but they'll also win when surveys come out about satisfaction and were expectations met, and their likelihood to stick with you and see this churn population start to trend down and settle back to where we used to be. So
Great.
education and transparency, clarity.
One point to add to what Michelle just said, I would recommend is early in the plan year, invest in a new enrollee study to understand where a member has come from, because you can find some really interesting insights from the dissatisfiers from their previous plan, and use that to help establish, those things that you can combat in your plan, or at least address or minimize in your plan. And I think it brings good insight to really, take advantage of those who are dissatisfied with previous plans, and to help present your plan in a more favorable light.
Yeah, and it can be probing if we're in areas where we want to grow. Those have you experienced, are you feeling, acknowledge the feeling that they're having, so they want to turn to you.
All great points. Excuse me. So we're going to take a quick break and we're going to do a little poll question, which Vivian is going to post up for the folks out there. So, Wiki, in the coming year, what is happening with your marketing budget? Is it growing? Will it be flat? Or do you see it shrinking? So everybody out there, if you can put your response in there, be interesting to see. We have flat winning 50%. We have more responses out there. Any others? Okay, flat continues to be the the biggest response. We'll give it maybe 30 seconds or a minute left. Shrinking is in second place.
We've never heard the theme do more with less, have we?
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll close down the poll and we'll get back to our questions. Um, let's see. All right, here we go. And we'll start out with Jim. This question: in what ways do you institutionalize learnings from past AEP periods to make sure that you're strengthening your competitive edge as you move forward?
Yes, so I'm sure the panelists have some more comments here. I'll throw a couple quick ones out. So certainly from an agency perspective, the test and learn and capturing that and putting it into your CRM, so you're continuously leveraging year over year what you've learned. From what HealthWorks AI does, I would tell you that we base all of our modeling off of 7 years worth of CMS data, and we weighted on the more recent open enrollment windows or enrollment trends, but certainly making sure you're codifying that and making it part of all of your go forward strategies is critical.
Michelle, what do you think?
So I think from the agency standpoint, there's the test and learn, whether it's the CRM or our creative throughout the journey. And Jason can speak to it in a deeper level, but there's also the historical performance of whether it's a certain channel, it's a creative approach. So we're always looking to apply what worked and eliminate what didn't work or test against what didn't work. So test and learn, I think, and using historical information to make your bets and where your investment should be. Jason, you want to expand?
Yeah, I think that obviously agree with like the sentiment of Jim and Michelle, and I think that like the way pragmatically that we like to approach it is that if you're not testing and learning, you're focusing a little bit more on reporting than you are analysis. And I think that in terms of institutionalizing learnings for multiple periods of time and getting smarter about audiences or creative or the messaging, it really is about that analysis that you can figure out what you're bringing into that next because if you're just talking about the information, kind of Jim, going back to like the poll question you're just talking about, if you're going to make a case for why you need to invest a little bit more, you really need that ROI or segmentation analysis to say, hey, this is a high value segment and this is why it's meaningful that we go after them. They're going to cost a little bit more to acquire, but it's going to be meaningful. I think that the other big thing that in this question is the interoperability of the learnings. And I think that certainly what we see here on the merge side of things is that certain channels are a perfect test environment where we can learn, we can kind of quickly deploy creative or segment the audiences a little bit better. But obviously, having the great partners, both in terms of how we're setting up the tracking codes and the taxonomy of that metadata that kind of can go downstream to fuel AI, but also that we can pull it out of the platforms and we're kind of de-siloing the data and information if it's programmatic display or paid social or kind of using every platform that is available to us as a landscape. And then like the last quarter mile, I think is that when we're looking specifically about AEP, Alan said it best earlier. It's a short time frame, so there's not a lot that you can do in the moment. So it is our best practice to go in with inductive reasonings and inductive analysis. Let's go in with the questions that we want to answer, introduce some variability so we come out of the AEP period with learnings that we can use for next year. Then at the end of AEP is when you can really do your deductive analysis and figure out why did Facebook not perform the same way as we thought it was? So, like, paramount to all of that is forecasting and understanding, going in with an understanding of what we think we're going to get out of every channel and every touch point. So that way we can get smarter and pull that across the way as demographics and audiences shift.
Great.
And just if I could add just one minor thing,
Sure.
and it's just related to the test and learn approach, which I absolutely agree with. You need to know that. But also, um, don't give up on those high performing creatives. I mean, I know our agency partners don't like hearing this, but sometimes we get tired of creative before the consumer does. And if something is working really hard for you, it's okay to reuse it. It's absolutely fine to do that. And introduce something else to test it against. You always have your champion and your test, but it's but go with work, ride that horse until it gets tired.
Great. All great commentary. Um, so we're talking primarily about marketing and how marketing can support growth and profitability, but it's not all about us. How can marketing work with other departments, areas, whether it's product development or sales, to make sure that we're doing the most we can to drive profitability? And we have different takes here. We have agency and partners and health plans here. But Jim, why don't you start off and what's your take on that?
Yeah, sure. So there's four drivers of growth, right? So there's product, there's network, there's marketing, and there's brand. There's some other adjacencies like distribution, what have you. So we track four of those. We track network, product, brand, and marketing, and to help organizations understand really where they stack rank against their competitors. And so having that knowledge is really important. The way that I think marketing can bridge is understanding how those different levers can impact their efforts. And there's some really simple ways that manifests itself. One is a right to win, right? So marketing can do all the things in the world and do everything right, but if you really don't have the right to win, you don't have the right product, and you don't have the right network, you're wasting money. So I would hearken that back to the first question, Alan, right? So how do we optimize for the best operations in a tight budget scenario? We got to focus where we have the right to win. And another layer there, which comes into network and product, where do we want to win, right? So there are areas in Human and all these national players did this last year. There are places where we don't have the right infrastructure in place to run a profitable operation. And so we need to understand, one, where we have the right place to win, want to win, and where we have the right to win. And so it's the overlay of those things, and that comes from the confluence of those four different things, right? So if we don't know what product and network we have in place, marketing can't necessarily pick where to dive deep. And so I think understanding those economic drivers are super important. And then marketing becomes the activation layer of that and pushing it out in the marketplace. So that's just, I think, a really important way for marketing to work collaboratively across the organization. And that's hard. I know, having worked with, 50 different health plans over the past 20 years, they're silos, right? And so breaking down, and Alan smiles because he knows, breaking across those silos is difficult, but when you get to the economics of it, that really, in my mind, that's the view that gets it done. If we're all pulling towards how do we do the right thing for the customer, but also do the right thing for our organization to be able to deliver a product.
And Alan, what's your take?
I agree with everything Jim just said. And if you're waiting till June and when the bids are submitted before you as a marketer look at your plan designs, you're really running behind. I think you got to start that collaboration that Jim referenced early as the products are being designed, to understand the insights that's going into it, so you can start formulating your strategies, particularly around if it's a geographic strategy, or if you need to do targeting based on certain benefit designs. So you got to do that early. The only other thing I would add in terms of other collaborative relationships to consider and maybe maximize is with your clinical and care management areas. They really are playing a much more important role, particularly as star ratings have become much more challenging to achieve now. I think to understand what their approach is to maintaining high quality ratings, and then how can you as a marketer emphasize that in your materials through publicizing the care management programs, or importantly reinforcing them as a person becomes a member, and you're trying to get them to follow their health rewards and their journeys. That's just an important relationship to have and maintain, and it'll pay off in the form of higher star ratings if you're successful in doing it.
Great. So next, this is back to Alan on regulatory seems to be becoming more and more important in what we do and making sure that we're compliant and everything that we put out there. What are you seeing as far as making sure that we're making sure that everything we do is compliant, whether it's integrating compliance into the creative process or training people, or
Yeah,
what do you mean?
yeah, it means a lot of things, Jim. I think recently most of us associate, a lot of the enforcement actions around the deceptive marketing practices that some lead generators have been using, and frankly, some of those were pretty bad in terms of bait and switch, or promoting things that were only available if you put in your zip code, and maybe you will get that Part B give back. I think it's important to lean into transparency and trust, to demonstrate that to prospective members that you can be trusted to market and advertise benefits that are real and that are available in your service area. So transparency is key. I think focusing on benefits that matter, like I mentioned earlier, is still important, and is a big part of how you should develop your advertising. Obviously, work with your compliance teams to make sure that you're not pushing into the gray area at all. It's just not worth it. And not that I think anybody would from a marketing perspective. It's more the lead generators who've been doing that. But importantly, the rules around how you interact with brokers as a third-party marketing organization. I think CMS sees many brokers as a TMO. And so you've got to make sure you've got good monitoring in place to ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to do, because you're on the hook now as a health plan, and that does raise the stakes somewhat. But yeah, be transparent, honest, and forthright is always the best advice.
Great. Um, so the world is changing, and what's the expression they say? Change happens slowly, then all at once. And what we do is changing a ton just in the last couple of years with AI technology and zero-click search and that type of thing. So, Jason, how do we rethink how we communicate with people and how we put out our marketing plans given these huge changes within the market?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've seen it, we spend a lot of time studying it, is that it is really the best and most analogous is that it's a natural extension and evolution of what we're seeing with SEO. And that these models are getting updated, if they're offsite, if they're the Geminis, the ChatGPTs of the world, those are getting updated, but they're not getting updated every year or right away, at least right now. So I think that the issue that we face that we need to be cognizant of is that a lot of the content that are in these AI platforms may not be the most up to date or current, because obviously, like, if they're asking information about a specific plan, they're still going to have to go to like that organization's website to get the most relevant information. So I think being cognizant of that, and then where like the SEO comes into play, is that how do you make it easy and frictionless for people to consume that information? If they are continuing on, it's making sure that, it's a combination of customer experience and content in terms of making sure that you are making it available. We know that there's going to be a natural gravity in terms of how people are consuming information with all these AI agents. So what do you do in terms of making sure that you're there from both a content standpoint and also a data curation standpoint of that content? So that way, when people are knocking on your front door of your website in your own content, how you can disseminate it out.
Right.
I think we're starting to see a bit of a decline. It's slowly starting with Google search, and the zero click behavior, because when you search, most of the time you are getting that big AI Gemini response. So people are defaulting there. So we now need to understand, how are the LLMs getting their information? Where are they getting the information? What is their criteria for ranking you? How do you rank? Because the criteria in the ranking in ChatGPT is going to be different than Gemini from Llama. So that's an area that as an agency we're starting to look at, and we could help your brands pull a report to understand how you are evaluated and how you are ranking with each, because it's something we need to optimize for now, as that trend is starting to drive there instead of the traditional search results.
Great. Alan, you have 65-year-olds who seem more like 40-year-olds as far as technology and sophistication. And then you have my mother who's 88 who, doesn't touch a computer. So what are you doing to deal with those kind of currents?
Yeah, you have to be there for both. I think that, the baby boomer generation is coming to an end. I hate to say it. I'm sort of in that generation now, and Gen X is right behind us. So I think as a trailing end of the baby boomers come into the marketplace, they're going to be focused on, accessing information. I think similar to how your mother might be doing it by through direct mail. Offline tactics are influenced. Face-to-face or phone conversations are going to be important to maintain, but you definitely need to invest in technology to attract that younger boomer population, the Gen Xers that are right behind them, who rely on technology to do everything. And so digital marketing, which I think we all, we recognize and value the importance of, will become more prominent. Direct mail likely will drift away a bit, but still remain relevant for many. It's an expensive tactic, but a necessary one. I think I saw a report that direct mail is still number one in terms of lead generation, so it's not going away, but it's getting less. I think importantly also is how you present yourself to the market is important. You want to reflect the consumer who you're trying to attract, and so lifestyle and healthy lifestyles generally are, I think, more appealing than just representing the silver foxes that are you typically see with Medicare ads. It's people who aren't just who are likely going to Coachella because they like the attendees there and the acts. They want to be marketed to in a way that connects with them. So you've got to have a diverse portfolio of ads that's going to hit all of those, and that's where your data comes into play. Having good segmentation, particularly in your agent programs, I think that's where you see it more prominently, more so than AEP. AEP, you've got all of those all at once, so you kind of have to find a mix and a balance that is might be a bit more vanilla in terms of its appeal. But if you've got good segmentation, good personas, you can, even for AEP, tailor that messaging to the person that based on their lifestyle and who they are. So I think it's a combination of things, and having access and maintaining the access to other offline tactics, but also investing in a really good digital program and having a solid website where the enrollment experience can be a bit more seamless and easy to maneuver.
Great. Jim, anything you want to add?
I would echo everything Alan said, and I just some chuckle moments. I remember in 2006 when I joined the agency space that direct mail was going to die, and almost 20 years later, it's still the workhorse. So it's just funny, and the fact that the baby boomer bulge is almost over again just kind of makes me feel old, because I remember when it was coming that many years ago. The only thing I would add, I kind of bring this larger lens into this, is it's also product, right? And so those younger people coming into your product, into your health plan, are going to have different product expectations than maybe. So transportation benefit might not be as important as it is to your mom, Jim, or what have you. So again, it's having that insight into, tied to the segmentation too, Alan, which you just said, what benefits and products resonate with those different segments, and then which of those are significant, which is something we bring from an intelligence perspective. But I think it goes across the four growth drivers, right? So it's marketing, product, network, and brand. But that's the only thing I would add, Alan.
Great.
I think they're expecting us to up our game. Gen X has a different expectation of what the digital experience and how integrated and how personalized it's going to be. So we talk about breaking down silos. How do we get access to the right data in all the different places to bring the right journey together with the right experience? So interesting challenges, fun challenges to work on.
Yes.
And going
Yes.
forward, having access to influencers who are relevant, particularly for the Gen X population, probably will be a real important part of our strategies. It's because that's what they do. But there's always risk with that as well.
Yeah. And the micro
Definitely.
influencers, when you think about the growth in the C-SNPs or veterans products, those niche audiences really have dedicated communities. So being part of that and working with a micro influencer can be very powerful for those audiences. So that's a very good point.
Great point.
Great. We'll start out with you, Jason, on this one. When it comes to leveraging tracking pixels while also managing what we have to do as far as consent, what needs to be done different in this new era of privacy?
Oop, Jason, we lost your audio. Jim, we might need to move on while Jason addresses that because that is going to be outside of my realm.
Yeah,
I think
me too. Don't come to me.
the
Says
only
I
thing
have
I would offer is I think we're seeing more clients in the healthcare space considering server-side tools like Fresh Paint, and we will have to have Jason back to speak to that at a greater depth.
Great.
yeah, you guys still
Jason, you
can't hear
there?
me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. I think consent is critical and it's expected right now in terms of all users that are coming to any website. And we've been living in this world for quite a few years, obviously, starting with Apple and ITP and GDPR of what's going on. I think what's critical right now is that people are proactively auditing their tracking pixels in the websites because it is often a patchwork of many different MarTech stacks and technologies together. So, kind of bringing your InfoSec teams together with the privacy policies of these pixels, just because a media vendor says it meets their privacy policy requirements. Obviously, you need consent with your internal teams to see what's happening there. I think the other critical thing is making sure that along with that auditing, making sure that like it's actually happening. So I think a common use case is that, yeah, we don't want to fire third-party pixels when you're on the website, but one small change or update to the website, maybe it does fire inadvertently. So making sure that you're actually backing up what you say when people click their cookie consent management platforms is doing is actually the action that they are getting.
Great. So we're kind of running out of time, but I want to make sure we get to the last couple questions. Alan, this is for you. How can smaller plans, and I'm not putting Horizon as a smaller plan, but how can Horizon compete against the Nationals? What's with the Nationals got bigger budgets, they got more technology at their disposal. What's your take?
Two words, grassroots. It's really being local. That's another two words. And I think that's what we found to be successful is we live among our members. We're their neighbors. We commute to work with them on the Garden State Parkway. Probably a little bit of road rage along the way, but we get along generally. But I think being a local plan gives you a lot of credibility, and so just be there for them. We have a lot of in-person meetings, virtual meetings throughout the year where we invite members to come in. I think that helps to establish the credibility with our members, and it just helps us stand out. We know we can't advertise these folks, so we don't try to, but we do maximize the opportunity to be in front of them and to to invest in the local advertising, and that includes out of home as well. We have a lot of transit here, so you can stand out if you know the area really well. In some of these areas, you know how to pick those locations much better than a national player who's relying on an agency out of New York or someplace else to place their ads.
Great. Question on product design. It is an important driver of growth. How can marketing overcome, and this kind of goes back to a question we had before, but overcome those internal silos, better work with product to make sure that you're putting your best product out there, given the situation with your competition, the money you have to spend, and all that. Jim, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I hit on a lot of it before. What I would add, though, is try to get a seat at the table, right? If I think about the sequencing of things within a health plan environment, bid season's just about penciled down, right? So, and Alan, your team's working on creative and all that other stuff, right? But the sooner you can get into that conversation and have ideally a voice, but if not, that you're hearing what's going on, right? You have a leading edge on that. So I'm thinking the overlap to some degree and how you pull where they're going with things into your strategies. And that's where I would start. Network is a little different. It's important to be aware of it, but I think on the product side, that's what I would think would make sense, is how do you get your ears in that room and have a bit of a sense of the approach.
Great. Then, I think last question, and I'll pose it to Michelle. We talked about direct mail before and how it's still important. How do you make that balance between what you spend on direct mail, what do you spend on other digital channels and media, knowing that we still got to do the direct mail piece? What do you think?
Sure. So it's bringing together some themes that Alan and Jason talked about. So we do some modeling. So it's all about that balance. We know that TV and historically and in certain geos, not all, and direct mail generate phone calls. And when we, with our clients, track those leads through ops and apps, we see that they convert at a much, much higher rate than typical form fills and digital leads like that. So looking at what is that number of phone calls that we need to, and if we're in a growth situation, to achieve our growth, and then look at how do we balance the digital so that we're bringing some incrementality to the direct mail, so we're exposed to more consumers, and also using the digital channels to do some education and pull them through the funnel. So when they get the direct mail or see the TV spot, they do make that phone call. So it's a numbers game. It's a balancing act. And also to do that, we pull in historical performance to generate those forecasting tools.
Great. So here's the last question, because I wanted to get it to as much as possible. Somebody said to Alan, what do you do as far as meetings in New Jersey?
We do a
Meetings
number of
with
meetings. Yeah, we offer meetings early in the plan year to introduce particularly new members to our plans and the benefits of the design so that they understand how to get the most out of them. What we're finding is we have a lot of returnees, particularly in some counties where there's a lot of heavy concentration of seniors near the shore. We get people coming back year after year just to know what's changing. So member orientation meetings early in the year helps to get them started and to maximize their benefits. Then we through the summer we have health and wellness meetings, and a lot of these are tied to our care management program. So if you attend the meeting, you actually get points that you can get a reward for up to $50 for certain actions. And so it's an opportunity for members to learn how they can maybe manage their health better, but also earn some points. Then we have ANOC meetings where we invite members to come early in the plan year, early October, usually the first couple of weeks before the start of enrollment, to reinforce what's in their ANOC. We try to bring the ANOC to life so that they understand what's changing. Again, this is about the transparency of, hey, we regret that some things have changed. Maybe the OTC benefit went down a little bit, but here's why. And we find that those are very well attended and very much appreciated. And yeah, we've done cooking demonstrations and meetings. So again, we have the luxury because we're local to be able to do that. We invest in a team that does an amazing job with that.
And
Awesome.
Alan taps into the local identity, or Alan and the broader team, the local identity of New Jersey and diners. Diners play a big role in the
Yeah,
strategy.
That's right.
a lot of
People
our
love
AEP
diners.
meetings are at diners. Yeah, so that's always
Yeah.
fun.
So that's all the time we have for as far as questions. I know I got a ton out of just hearing the four of you give your responses. This has been great, and I hope everybody who attended also got a lot out of it. So thank you. And Vivian, did you want to bring up the offer that I was talking about before? Um, let's see. There we go. Merge to close. We want to make sure that your members have the best member experience for this upcoming AEP. And we'd be willing to do a web conversion review of your website's readiness for this year, looking at barriers to conversion, uncovering optimization opportunities, and receive expert recommendations from our CX, UX, UI group. So what we're going to do, we're going to send an email to everybody who attended to see if they're interested in that. And if you are, just reply back to the email that we send out to you. So again, we're going to close this up, but I want to thank everybody who attended and everybody who participated. We really appreciate it. And we wish everybody success in this upcoming AEP. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.